In this video, it's just a quick walkthrough of Laopo's story, and I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, but if you have a better way of saying it, please feel free to inform me because I'd love to pronounce her name correctly. I like how Scopely is trying to follow Robert Kirkman and his stories, because from what I understand is that he did put out a book in Asia, and you know what? This almost reminds me a bit of the Netflix show Kingdom, and I highly recommend that TV show. My girlfriend and I binged the first season that's out, and we both found it to be really amazing, to be honest, and one of the better Netflix shows that is out at the moment. So during this video, I am mostly going to just have this roadmap play in the background, and I guess I'll start to talk about Laopo and how they're a new S-Class toon, which, we kind of all expected another S-Class to come out pretty soon, but at the same time, when we were told initially that S-Class is going to be very limited and we shouldn't see many of them, meanwhile, we're getting one every 2 weeks. So we've already had Pete, S-Pete, who's red. We've had Priya, who's blue, Laopo, who's green. So now we're kind of just expecting in 2 weeks for a fast S-Class toon to come out. And I'm very interested, but also kind of scared to know what we're going to need to collect to get this new S-Class toon that'll be out in 2 weeks, because now we're on, I think, chocolate cakes for this character. So this character, when their stats are maxed out, so when their max level is 150, they have 3,539 HP, 4,126 defense, and 2,914 attack. Now, their rush is quite slow at 85 AP, but I think that's pretty fair considering what else this toon can do. So with an AP of 85 AP, they can impair up to 5 enemies, daze them, and cause minus 60 attack for 3 turns. So if impair wasn't enough, then they're dazed and cannot use their active skills, and their basic attacks from the minus 60 attack will cause basic attacks to be so much weaker, and it'll be so much more difficult to take down any team that you're fighting against. So like if you had Laopo as a leader, because their leadership skill is all melee teammates get plus 30% HP, plus 30% defense, and a huge bonus to AP when taking damage. So if you have Wayland behind Laopo, for instance, you can't use basic attacks in order to bring him down very easily. And if people have maim resist, as well as maybe bleed or burn resist, then he's going to be so tanky because he has HP and defense, and then the more you attack him, the more AP he gains. Your basic attacks aren't very effective. You can't use an active skill in order to bleed, burn, remove impair, and if you try to rush, there's always that worry of possibly triggering payback. Now, with that minus 60 attack, you might be okay, but I know for some super powered toons, so like say an honor roll toon who has plus 120% attack, has this debuff of minus 60, but then has, the leadership skill, has the weapon, has another limited time attack boost, there's still the possibility of triggering payback, because if people can keep their payback toons with low enough defense, it's very easy to trigger it when rushing them. And now we also have to look at their active skill. Turn 1 active skill, 3 turn cooldown. So on the first turn, all 5 enemies get 300 exhaust for 3 turns. So if these enemies gain AP in an unnaturalistic way, so if it's just not a huge bonus to AP on their weapon, but if they use an active skill like gain plus 35% AP with whatever else they do, or if their rush, for instance, gains them AP, or really any other method that isn't specific to just a normal AP gain, this will cause 300 maim damage, I believe, to that toon for every 10% of AP gained in a unusual way, I'll say. So in some toons cases, this really encourages more basic attacks, but at the same time, if you don't have a type of weapon that can debilitate the opponent when you attack them, even if you don't trigger the maim, so the exhaust, and you don't trigger someone to rush on you, like, you're only doing a limited amount of damage. If they have bleed resist or burn resist, maim resist, like any of those three combinations, it can be very difficult to whittle down a team. And if they have the type of team that has those three resists kind of spread out, it's very difficult to create a team that can combat that and is effective against every single toon on that team. This, in my opinion, is an impressive defensive lead. It seems to be very airtight in some ways because there's a very limited number of things that you can do that'll be effective against this toon as a leader. And taking a look at the 6-star team compositions that Scopely has recommended, they have Laopo as a lead, Wayland with his payback, Dr. Stevens because, he can AP gain for his own team, he can impair the enemy, he can taunt the enemy, and when people are taunted into him, he can cause AP gain for the rest of your team. So if you have a Laopo actually and are using it against a team like this, it might be effective just because of that unnatural AP gain that Dr. Stevens would cause. But anyway, they also have Olivia, who is a Guardian 2 shield toon, 85 AP, but can confuse 4 enemies. And then L, a bide toon, who is amazing in my opinion. There are very few ways in order to stop bide, especially because she pain splits with other characters. So the other 2 6-star team compositions that Scopely put out are free-to-play teams. So Laopo lead, Elodie, Rick, Guardian 2, Tyrese, Indomitable Reviver, and Jesus Shield. Now my issue with this team is that with a huge bonus to AP when taking damage, that's going to cause your shield to rush faster. And regarding Elodie, she's a hold the line toon, so you need other toons to die in order for her to become more powerful. And when we take a look and compare this team to the team I mentioned just before, the skill levels are so different. Like we have Tyrese and Jesus, who are both Generation 1, versus Elodie and Rick, who are Generation 2, and then S. Laopo. And then for the last team, they have Laopo with Yvette, Solange, Dante, and Violet. A triple revive team with Yvette, who can focus your team and do continuous healing with Retribution 2. So if you kill her, she ends up giving AP to the rest of your team. Those last 2 teams remind me of the old revive meta that would continue to go on because it was just a continuous cycle. I'm just looking for a bit more originality, I think. If any of you had Laopo, what type of team would you try to make? Why would you make that team? And why do you think it would be effective or not effective? How would you go about modding them? I'm very interested to know kind of all of your thought processes on if you had a specific toon. Because we see all these team compositions that Scopely puts out, and they always try to put out one super expensive premier team, and then it's usually one team that's more free-to-play based. And I'm very interested to know kind of how your thought process works for this. Like for me, I would pair Laopo with 6-star Gabriel, for instance, because Gabriel can recover from all penalties. So that includes any maim issues, that includes, that should include something like exhaust, for instance. There's just a lot of different things that I think Gabriel could do on a team like this if you were running them with Laopo. Other toons that I would consider, obviously a toon like L for bide, but if we're thinking more along the free-to-play base, or toons that a lot of people would have, I would say Solange would be okay, because she's a reviver, a hold the line toon as well. So if you attack around her, well, then you're making her more powerful and it's more difficult to take her down. Laopo gives her the option of gaining AP faster, being an 85 AP toon, because if she ends up taking a lot of hits, then she has more of a chance to use her rush. I'm not sure about if a Guardian toon would be smart or not, because again, these toons will gain more AP by being attacked. And the other issue is if you have a toon that can penalize the enemy by being rushed, so like a bide toon or a payback toon, you don't really want a guardian shield, because if a player just attacks your payback or bide toon on the first turn and lowers their HP enough, and the guardian shield toon gets a crit hit, that guardian shield is now on your bide or payback toon that needs damage in order for their effects to trigger. So whenever I see a Negan or Wayland that's under a guardian shield, I end up rushing because I have no fear of triggering payback at all. And then there's just some toons as well that I'm okay if they end up rushing. Because, you know, if they end up giving the team a defensive buff, well, if I'm using my bleed team, that defensive buff doesn't affect me at all. If anything, it's just a wasted rush that allows me to have an extra turn, or at least takes away a turn from the enemy. So anyway, please feel free to share your thoughts on the type of team that you would build with Laopo as a lead if you had her. I'm very interested in this because I kind of like team building myself, and I'm always interested in sharing my thoughts and opinions and would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching and listening to my video.